Well, good morning. Welcome, everyone. We got lucky. The rain apparently decided not to join us. So good morning and welcome to the 8th annual ASCOA Women's Hemispheric Network. It's great to be here. My name is Cecilia Tornaghi. I am here for Susan Segal, who could not be here. And let me tell you, she's devastated. She really wanted to be here. So she asked me to actually say a few words for her, that she deeply apologized for not being here, but that she is so committed to this network. This is something that is really, truly very dear and close to her, the importance of bringing up young leadership, seeing the benefits and what we all can gain from having a more diverse and open workforce. And she also says she's very committed to expand the network, so stay tuned for more. I am a director of policy here at ASCOA, and I'm also the managing editor for the America's Quarterly, our magazine, which there's some issues outside for you, so please make sure to check it out. I want to thank, first of all, our generous sponsors. I really want to thank the 2019 ASCOA Women's Hemispheric Network lead sponsor, Goldman Sachs, and our corporate sponsor, HSBC. The network was launched about 8 years ago, and it was a much smaller group. It was an off-the-record meeting, and things have changed considerably since. So the importance of the issue is growing, and the acknowledgement that we need to foster future leaders in both genders, but especially look at women who need to see role models. We have hosted 39 events in 10 cities since the beginning, and through the hemisphere. We had over 115,000 views of our content online and growing. The event today is it's on webcast. It is on the record. It's being webcast live on ascoa.org. And our viewers outside, please can join the conversation by using our hashtag, which is #WomenASCOA. We also want to make sure that you, as you go, don't forget to check our gallery downstairs. The Americas Society, Council of the Americas also has an art program. And downstairs we have an exhibit by a Brazilian artist, Alice Micheli, Projeto Chernobyl. So make sure to check it out. The gallery will be open. And the topic has gained a different a different element in the last couple of days, since it seems like it's become an IMF policy. We had the opening of the IMF meeting with Kristalina Georgieva, the new managing director, putting gender equality as a main issue and something that can change the growth prospects for emerging markets, especially. So I want to take her words, buckle up, we're coming. I wanted to invite now our keynote speaker. We have Marian Salzman. It's definitely a treat to have her here. Salzman is Senior Vice President of Global Communications at PMI, globally recognized trend spotter and co-author of 16 books. Her latest, sorry for my accent, I'm Brazilian here, so this is my second language. Agile PR, expert messaging in a hyper-connected, always-on world. Very on topic. She has received numerous awards, PR Week's PR Professional of the Year in 2011, the She Runs It 2017 Changing the Game Award, and has been listed in PR Week's Global Power Book. At PMI, she leads a team of over 100 people across 3 continents, and it will be great. It's our honor and pleasure to hear what she has to share with us of her own trajectory. Marian, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you all for coming out this morning, and I hope I can kick this off in an interesting way. Thanks to the Americas Council for inviting me. By creating this network, you're helping to see that all the work that earlier generations, and I'm starting to feel so old, I feel like that earlier generation part, has put into advancing the cause of women, and that it doesn't get undone. We cannot afford to take a step backwards. Women can't afford it, businesses can't afford it, society can't afford it. I think that's what many of us forget at times. Doing good for women is doing good for everything. I look out at all of your faces and realize that many of us have grown up in different universes. I always tell people I'm a graduate of Brown University. I am a Harvard University reject. But most importantly, I wasn't able to apply to Harvard University. I had to apply to Radcliffe College. And I'm old, but I'm not that old. And people forget the first time I went to be a guest at the University Club, I had to go in through the service elevator. I wasn't welcome to go in through the front door. So again, an awful lot has changed in 3 decades. And I think we can't forget that. I have to remind myself every day, I cannot forget how different it is today, and yet everything isn't perfect. Women have always expected to have some kind of career, to have some kind of opportunity to put their talents to use. All of you out there likely attended schools where girls and young women excelled, maybe even holding the top academic rankings and dominating the on-campus leadership opportunities. And yet here we are, just shy of a century since women gained the right to vote in the US, and 56 years since President Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act into law. And how's that going for many of you? If you're like most women, you've discovered that parity that is now relatively common in schools hasn't entirely seeped into the workplace, at least not into the upper echelons of many industries. I go to meetings today, and much to my dismay, I look around, and I'm usually either one of one woman in the room or one of 2 women in the room, and I cannot believe we've worked this hard and come this far, and that's still normal. And that means that you've got to take extra care when plotting out your career paths and figuring out how to navigate the day-to-day. And you need to take into account certain things that a man might never consider, like personal safety during business trips and the expectation that because you're young and female, you'd be an excellent candidate to fetch the coffee. I've been there, and I've fetched that. In the old days, I was completely proficient at one thing no one else in my office. I knew how to reload the fax paper. And in those days, it was a roll, and it was a lot of work. And I was extraordinary at fax paper loading. My job here today is to let you know what has worked for me when it comes to getting my way. And by my way, I mean the jobs and the projects that I want, the salary that I deserve, and the respect that I'm due. And believe me, I'm really proud to be standing here, and I know that a good portion of it is also luck. And I want to be really clear that you don't discount that other thing, the good luck, being at the right place at the right time, making the right small talk at the right moment, having your kid in class with that kid who you just were nice enough to give a sandwich to, and it opens up a door. We need to be thinking about all those things. First of all, reject perfection. I grew up thinking I could be perfect. Well, that was a disaster. It doesn't work. Do any of you listen to NPR's Why Wait, Don't Tell Me? A few years ago, the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson was a guest. He tanked the quiz. One of the brightest people in the universe got 2 out of 3 answers wrong. And you know how he responded? He was happy. It was with delight. He said that if he'd gotten all 3 right, he wouldn't have learned anything. And instead, he learned 2 new things that day. That's the attitude that you need to embrace. If you're not going to get anything wrong, if you're never going to make a mistake, you're not growing, you're stuck in place. And what a horrible, soul-sucking position it is to be stuck in place. So I advise you to seek out failure. I know it's a hard thing to hear, but I think it's really a good objective. Seek out failure, but don't live in fear of it. I fail frequently, and I get over it fast. I always say, and it's quite a female comment, I need 5 minutes to go sulk, and then I'll be back. Take my advice. Don't sulk all afternoon, but 5 minutes to sulk, and it works. In the business world, rumination is not your friend, except that things that didn't go according to plan, and then get ready for your next move. Take smart risks. You won't get ever ahead, at least not very far ahead, if you don't take calculated risks. And some of the risks that I've taken haven't been all that calculated. I still remember the first time I was expatriated. I was in my early 30s. I was single, and I remember not really realizing what I'd signed up for until I saw this moving truck in front of my apartment on East 77th Street. And I realized I was moving to a country, the Netherlands, that I had visited all of once in one of those after-college trips with a Eurail pass where you don't remember a heck of a lot. So that was a bold risk for me. I went there to introduce the internet. I was extremely lucky. I got there when it was less than 1% penetrated, left 3 years later in a country that had put in high-speed internet and had achieved over 40% penetration. But when I was getting ready to go, I called, it was then a nationalized industry, the Dutch PTT, and I said I'd like to arrange for a phone line and a fax line so I could have my computer and call waiting. And they said, call waiting, that would be rude. It's not invented here. And I was lucky enough to be on the task force 2 years later. They did a very Dutch thing. They put it on everyone's phone, and you had to decline the service 2 months later. So guess what country had the highest penetration of call waiting in Europe in 1 year? That would be the Dutch. If you truly want something, and if your gut says go for it, even when your head is sending out danger symbols, just take a chance. When I moved to a new ad agency in the early 1990s, the internet was this place for geeks and for perverts. And there I was, and I decided to make myself an expert. And one thing I can promise you, especially in the early 1990s, I didn't look like a geek. I definitely wasn't a pervert. And the great company joke would be they would take this very geeky looking man.
I look around the world and I travel around Latin America.
They would take this very wonderful, geeky-looking man, and they would say to clients, who do you think is the expert on the internet? And he would get an overwhelming number of nods, and then they would say, it's her, and all of a sudden, what did it mean? It suddenly turned the internet into something that could be social, that's something that could be connectivity, something that could be people doing things that you didn't expect. But it was really scary to tie my career to something that people thought was perverted and nerdy. So, look, lower income people were never going to go online is something else that they said, and along came this thing called America Online. And that changed everything. All of a sudden, everyone installed the disc that they got from Time Magazine or the Atlantic Monthly, and they realized they could speak to their best friend from high school, their best friend from college. They could read a magazine or newspaper they didn't have access to, and then suddenly the internet was going to change the world. I started the first market research company in cyberspace. Now that's the smart thing I did. The stupid thing I did was sell it for $180,000 when I had the exclusive rights to do online market research on AOL for 10 years, and we sold it a little bit after the first year. So take my advice, but don't ever take my timing. I will always give you the wrong cue. You got to figure out what you're willing to sacrifice. I think that when I was in college, there was an Jolie perfume came out with this famous I Am Woman TV ad featuring this gorgeous blonde who's singing about bringing home the bacon and frying it in a pan. Forget it. I hope that your generation has come to terms with the idea you cannot have it all. Men can't have it all. Female can't have it all. Every choice you make in life involves some form of sacrifice or another. The college you chose precluded your attending another college. Your decision of where to live impacts everything from job opportunities to who becomes part of your friendship circle. The type of career you pursue will help to determine the type of family life and social life that you can enjoy, and vice versa. If you're hungry for a career that you know will necessarily involve a lot of travel, late nights, and weekend works, you've got to understand and acknowledge the repercussions on other parts of your life. Please don't misunderstand me. I am not suggesting that you can't have a satisfying career and family life. Many, many people do. Nor am I telling you to give up on a fast-paced career if you want children. On the contrary, we need you. It would be a disservice, though, for me to stand up here and pretend that you can have everything all at once. It's not possible. So come to grips now with what you really want and what you truly want and what you're prepared to give up to get what you want, and make decisions that allow you to achieve it. Don't lie to yourself. Honesty starts really with what you're saying to yourself about what you need for you. And that may mean plotting a slightly different career path, perhaps one with more flexibility and even the option of remote work. That may mean choosing an employer with family-friendly policies and a culture that rewards people on accomplishments versus hours logged. Be thoughtful and be strategic with your choices. Don't make this assumption that everything's going to work out in the end, because that doesn't happen. And that leads me to my next piece of advice: be irreplaceable. If you want to have agency over a career, then you need to be worth it, meaning that what you contribute to an employer is so valuable that they're willing to fight to keep you. Yes, that can mean a higher salary. It can mean a loftier title and bigger responsibility, but it also can mean the flexibility to call your shots. And that is priceless. Maybe it means that you can work from home when needed, or you can get out of an ill-timed business trip, or maybe get a chance to work on a project you're passionate about, even if it's not part of your usual responsibilities. I'd go to the ends of the earth to help a colleague who I know gives everything they have to their job, because I know that they're giving me their all, and I know what that's worth to me, and more importantly, to our company. But if you're phoning it in, and well, honestly, if you're phoning it in, you won't last long. In many of the places I've worked, your employers aren't going to go out on a limb for you. They're not going to think of you when a high-profile project comes up. They're not going to trust you to manage anything important on your own. They're not going to be willing to invest in you because clearly you're not invested in the job. If you're showing up every day out of inertia or for the paycheck, get out of what you're doing and find something that's going to make you happier and more whole. Either find a job that doesn't require the drive and commitment, or figure out what you're really passionate about. Make room for someone else who would love to be doing what you're doing. And for goodness sakes, don't become your office Eeyore. We all know those people who's sitting around in a funk, in this miasma of gloom and pessimism and dissatisfaction. And those people are toxic. And frankly, another quick piece of advice: if you're sitting next to one of those people, move your chair, because that kind of thing is lightly contagious. You gain nothing by complaining about how things are if you don't have a solid plan to make them better. It seems trite at this point for me to say it, but be the change you want to see. If you don't like the way the things are going at your company, change them. Your life is not a dress rehearsal. It's the only shot you get. You've got to become your own best ally. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush here. I've worked with plenty of women who are bastions of confidence, who don't seem to get second-guessed about themselves a single time in their lives. In my experience, that's not the norm. Too often, the women I've worked with have been their own worst critics, constantly apologizing. Leave the apologies at home. There's enough we screw up at home. Keep the apologies there. Even they apologize for things that are out of their control, and they rarely stop to acknowledge the amazing things that they're doing day to day. This relentless pursuit of perfection, holding ourselves to higher standards, isn't helping anyone. I had the great privilege early in my career of working with the amazing advertising legend Jay Chiat. One of his famous expressions was, "Good is never enough." At the time, I embraced the concept, why settle for good? But as I've advanced my career and seen the casualties of unrealistic expectations, I've found myself thinking, you know what, sometimes good is enough. I still want to shoot for the stars. I still hold myself and the team responsible for the highest standards. But I think I've gotten better about making smart choices, about recognizing that the pursuit of perfection is not sustainable and actually can be detrimental to a team and to an organization. Work hard, do your absolute best, and then embrace the fact that that's enough, that you're enough, and actually spread the word. I work with people who have treated their jobs as a blood sport, managing through fear and seemingly allergic to doling out compliments and praise. Don't be that person. And don't let anyone get away with being that person around you. Stand up for yourself. Speak out on your own behalf and on behalf of others. The work world is changing. I really believe that. And behavior that was acceptable a decade ago, I cannot believe what I put up with on the way up. And I'm not talking about Me Too stuff. I'm talking about plain old rudeness. Don't accept it. It's not something one should tolerate. Your generation deserves a lot of credit for having stood up for themselves, so thank you, but keep doing it more. Claim your space. Part of being your own best ally is acknowledging your right to exist. Don't apologize for taking up space. We have as much right to it as anyone else. And that means physical space. We've all dealt with the man-spreaders on the subway. And that means psychological space. Our ideas and perspectives are valuable. Our insights are keen, and our very presence is making the organizations we're aligned with stronger and more profitable. I saw a video on Facebook the other day of the most adorable 3-year-old boy reciting his affirmations on the way to school. I'm smart, I'm blessed, I can do anything. It reminds me of a story a friend told me about someone she knew from camp. That girl was definitely in her awkward stage, a foot taller than everyone else, and big-boned, as my mother would have said. Not conventionally attractive by any means, not particularly popular, and yet every morning she would do what her mother taught her. She'd stand in front of the mirror. This is in camp. We know how mean girls are in camp. And she'd pinch her cheek literally, smile brightly, and say, "Good morning, beautiful." It absolutely affected her outlook for the day and how she regarded herself. And I think it's high time we all come up with affirmations of our own, the mirror being optional. I think we have to breathe. I'm going to say this. I'm the last person in the world who should be giving you this advice because I don't breathe enough. I can hear the universe actually laughing when I say, breathe, make time for downtime. All I do is complain that things aren't open 24/7 in Switzerland. Relaxation does not come naturally to me, to put it mildly. A media outlet once called me 100 ideas a minute Energizer Bunny, and I don't think that was a compliment. I'm not real good at relaxing. But a few years ago, the first time, 13 years ago to be specific, life actually got tired of waiting for me to slow down, and it decided to pull on an emergency brake. I was doing my regular segment of Good Morning America, talking about trends, and they came to see me in the green room, and they said, "We're not going to keep booking you until you get your eyes done." My eyes still haven't been done. And I blurted out, "I don't need to have my eyes done. I have a brain tumor." And they looked at me like I was insane. But now that I had taken this public stand, I felt like I should go find a doctor and find out if my self-diagnosis was correct. I went to see an eye doctor in Fairfield County, Connecticut, and I walked in and I said, "Hi, I'm here and I have a brain tumor." And his response to me was, "You and every middle-aged woman in Fairfield County." And I said, no, I feel it growing behind my eye." And he said, "You don't have a brain tumor, you probably have dry eye." I said, no, I have a brain tumor. And I was so persistent at this point. To get me out of the office, he gave me a prescription for a CAT scan. 2 days later, I got a phone call. I was sitting at my desk. I was the SVP and Chief Marketing Officer at J. Walter Thompson, and we were in open plan, and this doctor, whose name I do not remember, and I don't know if I ever knew, phoned me. And he said, "Well, I have good news and I have bad news." And I'm thinking, okay, well, I already now have a brain tumor. When do you plan to tell me? And he said to me, "Well, I was wrong. You don't have dry eye. You have a brain tumor." And I said, "Well, I tried to tell you that." And I was so proud of myself that I diagnosed. I did not think through the consequences of having brain tumors. But actually, this diagnosis of a brain tumor, which was the first of two I've had over 13 years, actually forced me to re-examine my life. It probably made me more motivated. It slowed me down for a little bit, and probably, because then it was like, okay, I'm going to compete with the odds. They say you can't come back from a brain tumor and ever do as well financially. Completely untrue. You can't come back from a brain tumor and ever regain your physical shape. Really? Because you have no idea what you can do with a stair climber in a gym if you're focused enough. What was amazing about having a couple of cranectomies was what it was able to do in terms of get me to examine my life. I haven't slowed down, but I've become much more health-focused and aware of how essential it is to do things like rest and read and recharge, rather than always racing to cram more into the day. Moving to Switzerland has helped. When I joined PMI, the biggest culture shock wasn't transitioning from the advertising world to the tobacco industry. It was finding myself in a place where I can't get Chinese food at 11 o'clock at night, and where my doorman doesn't have my dry cleaning at midnight when I come home. And who knew that there are actually people in the world that don't check their email on weekends? It was mind-boggling for me. And as you consider your own way up on the track, don't forget to step outside. I keep reading about things like forest baths and the health benefits of walking barefoot in nature, but I'm much more of a high heels on concrete kind of person. But I really urge you to get outside, physically outside, in nature, breathe, ponder the enormity, and get outside of your daily routines. It's the only way to get truly good ideas. And also get outside of your head once in a while. Take a genuine break. Do something unexpected. Play. Now, here's something you would never guess about me. The place I get my best ideas are fishing on a lake, sitting by myself with a worm on a hook, because I can't speed up when that fish is going to bite my hook, but I have plenty of time for ideas. You've got to also find your purpose. I've always tried to incorporate some sort of bigger purpose into my work. I'm tremendously proud to have been part of the launch of Giving Tuesday, an International Day of Giving. We created a sort of an anecdote to the gluttony of Black Friday, also probably the gluttony of Thanksgiving. What started as a relatively small US-based initiative in 2012 has rapidly expanded. In 2018, people in more than 150 countries participated, raising in excess of $200 million for worthy causes. I've also done a lot of work with the UN to provide disaster relief after the devastating earthquake in Haiti, and to support wounded military veterans and their caregivers. And just under 2 years ago, I made this enormous change, leaving the world of advertising to join Philip Morris International. Yes, a brain cancer survivor whose father died of lung cancer, joining one of the world's largest tobacco companies. To say that people who know me were shocked would be an understatement. I've never smoked. I can't abide the smell of cigarettes. I don't let people smoke in my house. I'd watched my father smoke for 50-odd years and become sick from it. I wouldn't wish the ill effects of that onto anyone. And that's really the point. When I was first approached by PMI, I shrugged it off. I kind of knew why they wanted me. I had this good track record on causes, but why would I want them? Something that the person who contacted me from Heidrick and Struggle said caught my interest, though, and I decided I wanted to do a little bit of research, and then a lot more research. And I also have to explain, I have a husband who's the ultimate do-gooder. He represents indigenous people. He teaches indigenous people law. He runs tribal clinics to help victims of domestic violence. So, and I called him and I said, I got this ridiculous call, and I told him no way. And he said, why? Maybe it's easier to make a difference on the inside than throwing bombs from the outside. Ultimately, I was hired not to sell cigarettes, but to end cigarettes, to unsmoke the world. There are about 1.1 billion smokers in our world today, and the WHO estimates that around the same number will be smoking in 2025, despite all the efforts to get them to quit. My job is to help persuade these adult smokers who otherwise would not quit to go smoke-free to switch to better scientifically substantiated alternatives. And we've already moved around 8 million people away from cigarettes, which is only a tiny fraction of smokers, but we're moving in the right direction. And I truly believe that we can rid the world of cigarettes, if not in my lifetime, then in yours. But do something that matters, whatever that may be, something that matters deeply to you and that supports a broader cause. Sure, you can do this by volunteering during your off hours or Venmoing a donation to a charity of your choice, but consider making the greater good a focus of your day-to-day job. Help your organization or your clients' organizations to see the benefits of environmental sustainability, of fair wages, of decent working conditions all along the supply chain, of working towards a more equitable world. There's no shortage of problems to address. Pick the one that matters to you and then get started. I'm going to urge you to fight for what's right. I don't care where you work. If it's an organization of more than a few people, you're going to find things that irk you, that frustrate you, that make you angry. Speak up and speak out. I've never been particularly shy about advocating for myself, but I'm increasingly attuned to advocating for other people, including people who aren't actually in the room or in the organization or in industry. Look, diversity matters. Diversity of gender, of race and ethnicity, of age, of socioeconomic backgrounds, of life experiences. It matters not just because it's the right approach to life and to our fellow humans, but it's the best approach for business. If you put 5 white, middle-aged men from similar backgrounds in one room and a truly diverse quintet of people in another, I can almost guarantee you that the better, more vibrant ideas will be generated by the people in room number 2, the mixed up room, the diverse room. We all win when we're inclusive. And of course, that begins with equality, with fairness and respect. And I'm thrilled to see more businesses starting to act that way. Ultimately, how the scales were tipped for me to go to Philip Morris is over something very, very near to my heart. We are the first multinational corporation in the world to be equal salary certified globally. Men and women at the same level are paid the same thing in every country in which we operate, and we've had that audited by PricewaterhouseCoopers. Without exception, that is the case, and that's a really big deal, and it's something that we're enormously proud of, and it's something that got me to overcome my own anxiety about our principal source of revenue. Your company might not be that far along, but don't accept this. There has to be a change. I don't care what industry you're in, insist on change, and in every way, drive change. As I mentioned, my abrupt career switch startled a lot of people, some of whom thought I should stay in my lane. After all, it was a success lane. Why would I venture out? Don't listen to those sorts of people. Don't accept false limitations of any kind. Look, going back, I wasn't supposed to go to an Ivy League university. It was out of the question. In fact, when I only applied to schools of that ilk, my guidance counselor called my mother and said, "Who does she think she is?" And my mother's attitude was, if you don't get in somewhere, you'll take a year off, we'll figure it out, because she knew I was non-negotiable. I wasn't supposed to write my first book as my first job right out of Brown, or to co-author many, many more over the years. I wasn't supposed to wait until I was in my 40s to settle down with someone. I've done a lot of things I wasn't supposed to do, and that has served me well. It's your life. Do it the way that works for you, not the way people around you have mapped it out. Which brings me to another point. Say yes. It's so easy to say no, especially when saying yes means stepping out of your comfort zone. When I was anxious about leaving my home and moving to the Netherlands, I just decided it would give me a more global perspective. It's certainly made it a whole lot easier to transition to the life we lead now in Lausanne. When in doubt, say yes. You'll experience more, you'll learn more, you'll grow more, and you'll grow further. One last thing. Appreciate the ridiculousness along with the sublime. So back in that Paleozoic era, when I was working at one of my agency jobs, we had a regular meeting with a client, a really important meeting, a stay-up-all-night meeting. We were ready. We had this. So we flew to DC on the big day. There were probably 5 or 6 of us. And we got to the client offices bright and early, only to be told that the people we were meeting weren't there. They were in our office in New York, waiting for our meeting to begin. That was not a good day. Although in retrospect, it was a really funny day. And the clients kind of sort of saw the humor. We scanned over all of our emails and eventually realized that no one had been explicitly stating where the meeting was being held. We assumed, they assumed, and that left us like 200 miles apart. Never assume. Don't get so caught up in the seriousness of the business world that you can't laugh at the mistakes. Life is too short not to see the humor in it. And finally, find your posse. The very fact that you're sitting here means that you're already making smart choices. You've chosen not to go it alone, but instead to convene with others to advance your career and perhaps in some ways society. Continue to do that. Find women and men who you can lean on for support and advice, and in turn be that person for others. Start today. I'm happy to take questions if somebody wants to ask questions.
Thank you, Marian. We probably have time for one question. If someone's got a burning question for her, this is your chance. Be brave. All right. Oh, we got one. We got the one.
Stay here.
What was the catalyst for PMI to equalize the pay? And was it an HR initiative? Was it?
It was actually something driven by a new leader in our people and culture team. I think he would say it was partially also a function of being father of teenage daughters, and looking around and recognizing that tobacco is a really hard place to work, and gender doesn't make very much difference. What makes a difference is your 100% commitment to the cause of getting people to leave smoking and 100% committed to the company. And he went to the board and he fought really hard. And it went from being something that probably fell into that crazy idea realm into being one of the most brilliant business strategies one could think of, because it means you don't have to look over your shoulder and say, is he getting more than me? You have to look at your desk and say, what do I need to get done today? So I think it was just the right guy at the right time, probably feeling the right pressure from the right daughters. Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Marian.